The U.S. dollar index seeing a 5% rally from President Trump's election up until his inauguration. But since then, the greenback has fallen about 1% as investors ditch America First wagers amid growing trade tensions and inflation concerns. Now there's some growing chatter on Wall Street about a so-called Mar-a-Lago accord as Trump's nominee to lead the White House Council of Economic Advisors laid out a roadmap for reforming the global trading system and weeding out economic imbalances driven by, quote, persistent dollar overvaluation. Let's talk about this and more. We want to bring in Sonja Marten, the head of monetary policy and FX research at DZ Bank. It's great to have you back here on Yahoo Finance. So talk to me just about what this all spells out here for the dollar and some of that momentum that maybe could be lost or regained here in the weeks to come.
Well, obviously, we've had a really tough month since Trump moved back into the White House. There's been, decrees being signed. It's been, tariffs announced and delayed. And, it's really difficult to look through the very confused messaging we've been getting here. The latest news, obviously, as you just mentioned, the Mar-a-Lago Accord, the idea that, you have a concerted action to prevent the overvaluation of the dollar. At the same time, the U.S. has confirmed that it stands by its strong dollar policy. So again, it's a lot of confusion. And I think when you look at the market reaction, there's been some movement, but I think investors are really, really struggling to see clear headway here because they're trying to figure out, on one side, the possible economic impact of Trump's policies. So we're talking tariffs, we're talking immigration policy, etc. And on the other hand, obviously trying to figure out which things they even should be taken into consideration, because of course, with Trump, you never quite know what you're going to get in the end. So there's a lot of confusion in the market right now. I think there are people who are starting to get more bearish on the US dollar, and I can understand that given what's happening. But I'm not quite ready to throw the towel because I still do believe that tariffs will come, and when they do, they will have a positive impact on the dollar.
What's the reaction that we saw last time? Because in Trump 1.0, we had tariffs, and a lot of economists, a lot of investment strategists were saying going into the election, hey, they can just dust off their tariff playbook from Trump 1.0 and potentially apply that here. So what did we see that first time, and then how much of that can be mirrored or perhaps the same play run this time?
I think it's quite different, to be honest, because first time around, the tariffs came quite late in the presidency. So that's not something he started off with. So there was a couple of years almost that went by until we got the full tariff story. So this time around, it's been an issue from the get-go. The other thing is that we're talking a level of tariffs that is going to be potentially much higher than what we saw during the first presidency. I mean, looking at China, for example, the tariffs have already been increased. We're now 30%. It looks likely that that's going to go up to 40%. That's a lot more than we had first time around. So I think it's difficult to compare those two scenarios. And my general feeling is that Trump is a lot more aggressive this time around. I mean, he's really, setting out a really quick pace here. So I think we have a much more determined Trump to deal with currently. And then also there is the fact that next to tariff policies and domestic policies like, reducing people in the administration, immigration policies, we also have the whole geopolitical context that's going on. So it's much more difficult this time around, I think, for investors to see clearly ahead. And I think 2016 and the years after that isn't a great playbook to sort of mirror from.
Are we seeing too much complacency in the markets, do you think, Sonja?
Yeah, I think so. I think, especially when it comes to tariffs, I think a lot of people presume, Trump, he barks, but he won't bite. And obviously, I can understand how people come to that conclusion because, he made this massive announcement a couple of weeks ago, 25% on all goods from Mexico and Canada. And then that same evening, he basically said, oh, well, let's give it another month and then we see how we go. I can understand how that leads people to the conclusion that nothing is going to happen. I do think that is highly unlikely. I think there will be tariffs. He has this very strong view about trade policy. So I think the market is underestimating and underpricing this risk.
Sonja, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for taking the time with us. We appreciate it.